And ladies and gentlemen, it is the voice of reason. Today's date, the last day of February. I hate that. Well, I hate it and I like it, but it's 2/28/2023. My name is Andy Van Beber. I'm joined by one of my compatriots, Travis Kirkendall, pimping it up in the club, hitting the stripper scene as always, and I am overlooking the earth. Looks like, I kind of think it's Saudi Arabia behind me. Not sure, but oh man, I didn't even update the titles for the night. I'm so behind. I'll update the titles while we're talking. But hey, welcome to the Voice of Reason. This is episode 47. We're closing in on the second full season of the show.
That's crazy. I still can't believe we've been doing it this long.
Well, we have outlasted many a startup. What do you want to call it? Podcast.
Yeah, a lot of them die after a couple episodes. It's funny. After Sean was telling us that, there's a few podcasts I used to follow based off people I knew.
Yeah,
and I went back and I'm like, man, they only had 20 episodes. What happened to that podcast?
We definitely have our cult following. I think it is. Is that the way we say it? The cult. We have the cult.
Do we have a cult following? Well, we have those people we still have our listeners from Germany every week, don't we?
Yes, we have I want to get that over that 10% mark. We're right at 9% of our listeners come from Deutschland, and
what if it is like a cult thing over there? It's like a whole religion of the
worship the bald man.
We love our German listeners. We're just having fun with it.
I don't do the Hail Hitler or whatever. Oh my God.
Now they're going to stop listening.
Yep,
you did that reference.
That'll do it right there. That does it every time.
It's 2023. Too soon.
Yeah, too soon. Our buddy Sean tonight he got called into a production meeting. You want to talk about a guy who's getting ready to go to the next level. We cannot share exactly how our buddy Sean is going to the next level, but he shared some very exciting news with us this week. We were stoked out of our minds. It is great. Sean is going to become I'm just calling it, I'm going to call it now, big movie star within 2 years. And we're just going to be
2 years?
We're going to be the flies on the wall. I'm telling you.
Yeah, he is doing some really cool stuff. I'm excited for when he gets to share with everybody. I'm excited.
They're going to be
It's also his birthday today.
You're kidding me. How did I miss that?
Or have you been on Facebook?
No, I haven't. I have not been on. I posted all of our stuff to Facebook. I have not been on.
It's okay. Facebook saved me. I'm usually good. I've been getting better about getting important dates in an actual calendar that sends me notifications. And thank God Facebook saved me on his birthday today.
Hey, look there! There it is. There it is. Right. Oh, I can't. It won't let me.
I can kind of see it.
It says Sean Patrick. Sean Patrick, happy birthday today. Happy birthday, Big Poppy. So yeah, we definitely want to wish him. How old are you? Do I even want to know how old you guys are? Is that going to make me feel that much older? Are you guys?
He's turning 27. I'm older than him.
It's sad to say that no, it's not sad to say. It's sad. It's been, so I've known you guys since 7th grade.
27 Club, get your white lighters out.
So how was the weekend? How was the weekend for you?
Weekend was good. I think you saw some of the food I was eating. I was very spoiled.
You were living high off the hog. You were living high off the hog.
I hurt myself. I really hurt myself. It was amazing. But no, we had a good weekend. Kind of weather was nice. Walked the dog.
It was
a lot.
Nice. I don't know about you though, but they're calling for 3 to 6 inches of snow for us on Friday. So.
Oh, I don't know. It looked like it was going to stay warm. I guess I haven't checked far enough into the week.
I'm to the point where they can't predict tomorrow anyway. Oh, Officer Vincent, what is up, Officer Vincent? Michael Vincent. And then
Good to have him
one of my
listening.
students jumped on there. Hello, Kinsey. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hello, Officer Vincent. Thank you for joining us tonight. This weekend for me was, I don't want to say laid back because that would be a lie. We went to Janine had her annual checkup down in St. Louis yesterday, which we're fingers crossed, keep her in your prayers. Everything's hopefully going to go. Officer Vincent says he turns 39 this year. Thanks, pal. No, but everything we hope will turn out. I think will turn out all right on that. Friday night was district basketball for Clopton boys. They won the district tournament, and then last night, Clopton boys clinched first time in a long time, clinched a sectional win.
That has been a long time.
It has been a very long time.
Holy shit.
And so
Good for them.
they will be playing on Friday versus the Salisbury School District. They win this one. It is a trip to the Final Four. The Bloomfield Wildcats knocked us out of state contention 6 years ago, and we haven't even been back to that close since. We haven't been to the Final Four. Oh, geez. Since I've been at Clopton. I've been at Clopton 20 years this year, and we have not been to a Final Four since I've been there. So,
yeah,
good luck to our friends out there, the boys who play. I know we have a few of our boys who play. I got to see the boys from, what was it 4 Deep or 3 Deep Sports?
I feel bad.
Zach Evans and Josh Harvey.
I think it's 4 Deep, right?
4 Deep. Our boys from 4 Deep saw them and got to sit right in front of them last night. Got to give the boys a big old hug. Told them I'd give them a shout out tonight if they even listen. But it was a great time last night.
So I'm familiar with them. What exactly do they do? Do they do like live broadcasts, or what do they do? They'll commentate on the game, or they just do social media?
They just do social media right now. So but yeah, they've got they're I think they're doing some rebranding work right now too. So shout out to them. We need to have the boys back on again here shortly. It's been a hot minute since we've had them on. But
yeah, I don't think I was on that episode. You guys had them on.
You probably weren't. I don't think you were. But trying to think what else. There's something else that happened this weekend. I can't. Oh, hey, and I started track practice last week. We
Nice.
we are doing a new program. I'm doing a new program with my athletes. It's speed training. It's called Feed the Cats, and it's a very
Interesting.
I started following a new track guru on YouTube, and it's actually our principal actually used it as in his old coaching gig. This guy by the name of Tony Holler, look him up. He does some, and I've never changed. I really haven't changed the way I've coached track in 20 years. I started doing this, and he said, take take times every day of how fast these guys are doing their sprint intervals. And in the first week alone, I just saw about a 60% improvement overall out of my kids. And so it was wild. I'm really excited about that too. So, but anyway.
After the show, I want to talk with you about that.
Okay, sure. So topping the news this week. And it's been topping news for the last 3 weeks, and we kind of pushed it around. I was hoping Sean would be on, but he's had what he had. This East Palestine, or I don't know how they say it. I think Palestine, whatever, however they say it. But this is in Ohio. This is a town of 4,800, and so on February the 3rd, a Norfolk Southern train going through East Palestine, carrying hazardous material, derailed. Now, it isn't so much about the fact that a train derailed. And I'll just start out with this. And I was going to tell Travis, but I saved it for the show. on average, per year, an average of 1,700 between 1990 and 2021, an average of 1,705 train derailments each year. So this
Holy
is something,
shit.
and when you really think about it, we see a little blurb here or a little blurb there on the news, and it can be passenger trains, it can be, it can just be anything. And here's the thing: shipping by rail is by far the most efficient, the cheapest way, and most efficient and cheapest way to ship goods. I saw, and it was, it's no longer Santa Fe Railroad. I forget, but it was like 4 or 5 Super Bowls ago. They ran an ad. It wasn't Norfolk and Southern. It was somebody else, but it said, one train can carry up to the same amount of like 200 semis, and the diesel and the electric these electric locomotives are very efficient on fuel. They're diesel. It's a diesel electric hybrid engine, and I know a little bit about this. I guess I can share my source. My source is my brother-in-law works for used to be GM, but they were bought out by whoever, and he is an engineer. He designs, he works on, he troubleshoots on locomotives, and so I'll preface what I say tonight with, we wanted to have him on the show, but he sternly told me, and I said no. He said we actually have a clause in our contract that we are not allowed to talk to radio, TV, podcast, any newspaper, any outlets. So I didn't want to get him fired, even though we're not, we're big in Germany. Don't get me wrong, we're big in Germany, but he shared a little bit of that information. Well, and I'll share some more facts that he gave me as we go along. So out of this, it was 150 cars. So 150 cars were on this train. 20 cars of this train were carrying hazardous material. 5 railroad cars can contain vinyl chloride. Now, vinyl chloride is a ingredient. It is the key ingredient used to make PVC pipe. You know what I'm talking about when I say PVC pipe? It's that white pipe like you use for plumbing. Okay, so it is the key. It is a key ingredient in PVC pipe. And what was decided was, at the time of this derailment, was, okay, what are we going to do because the temperatures around these cars had reached a critical level. And so by February the 4th, Norfolk Southern we've got to do a controlled explosion of these cars, or I guess you'd say controlled explosion. Is that the right terminology?
Controlled burn.
Controlled burn. That's better.
Which basically an explosion with that kind of material.
But the controlled burn was because if these cars exploded, it would have done so much more damage. Just shrapnel alone from these cars would be,
I can only imagine,
catastrophic to a community of 4,800. Let's just put it that way. So what they are linking this to, and there's a lot of different things that we want to look at as we go through this. Okay. What they're linking this to, and I'll go ahead and I'll show and I've already sent this to Travis. What I'm going to show. So this is what they're linking this to is faulty wheel bearings on one of the cars. And this sparking was witnessed by several security cams, but the video that I'm going to show here. So this is from the Butech Bliss, and there's a little credit up there, but this is the Butech Bliss industrial yard that was 20 miles from East Palestine. And as you can see, and when we've highlighted, and this is the video, you can see underneath there, you can see it sparking up underneath. That's the actual, the car. And so the temperatures, and what I had got on this was, and I have to look at my notes, the temperature, the wheel bearing hit 253 degrees. Now, you say, well, how in the world did they know how hot it got? And this is something again, passed along to me by my brother-in-law and from research. What they have is they have what they call wayside detectors every 20 miles along the railroad tracks. And as a train goes by this wayside detector, it looks at basically different parts of the train, to look for leaks, to look for sparks, to look for any abnormalities. And that video that I showed you guys was actually near one of those wayside detectors. Now, these things are placed every 20 miles along the track. And from what I have read, NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, is still reviewing. So on these trains, they have cameras, just like an airplane. They have a black box. They have all the computer communication. They have all the thing. But what was shared with the news outlets so far is that the crew did get the warning. Okay. Now, this particular warning that they get, they are instructed that when they get this warning, they're to slow the train down, stop the train, inspect the axle. Okay. Now, all we know is right now is that the engineers slowed the train. And I have looked on multiple sources. I've looked in, and they haven't released any further details about what was done. I think the NTSB is supposed to release a report sometime soon. They've released an initial report saying, "Hey, this is what happened. This is what we saw." And there are a lot of things that have gone wrong with this. But I guess the first thing that we can look at as to what happened. So when this train derailed, at first, like any other derailment, we actually had a derailment. It's been about 8 or 9 years ago over here at Barry, Illinois. And, they keep the highway blocked around this thing, and, they go through the standard protocol. They inspect the track. They go and they look at all of this stuff. And so this, NTSB is called. So NTSB is called, EPA is called. February the 5th, the National Guard's brought in. They evacuate. An evacuation order is put in place on February. So the train derails on the 3rd. They put the evacuation order in on the 5th to, hey, we're going to do this control burn. I was wrong. It was on February the 6th that they did this control burn. Okay? And so the EPA is there. NTSB is there. They do this controlled burn. Okay? And you had what was it? The Ohio National Guard actually had what was called you can help me out with this, Travis. I guess it was called a civil support team that was in play. I don't know if that's more to help out with.
What's the context? Like, so the civil support team did what now?
It said, in addition to real-time air monitoring, the EPA says it collected air samples in conjunction with the 52nd Civil Support Team, a specialized unit of the Ohio National Guard.
I want to say there's some type of, there is an MOS that deals into that kind of deal. I can't think of the name of it, but yeah, they deal with like water purity and like air and all that other stuff. I can't think of the proper name of it.
Yeah,
I guess civil crew or whatever.
And these guys, and so the civil service team they monitored air monitoring in 3 public administration buildings. They collected air samples from the three buildings. They investigated the surrounding townships. February the 8th, the evacuation order is so they do the control burn on the 6th. The train derails on the 3rd. They do the control burn on the 6th. And February the 8th, the evacuation order is lifted. Okay? So the people who come in, they start coming back into town. And within so the EPA says, okay, deep clean your houses. Deep clean your houses inside and out, because you also have to remember, after they did this control burn, you have falling residue. Okay? And so this stuff is on the outside of your house. It's within the inside of your house, and they're telling people, okay, do a deep clean. Do a deep clean, and we're going to continue to monitor, have bottled water, all that stuff.
Yeah, bottled water.
Yeah. And so residents, so February the 10th then, starting on February the 10th, there are a number of citizens who start developing a rash. Okay, so they start developing a rash. And again, the EPA is like, oh, well, the air quality, it's just, we're not even finding any of this stuff in the air. And, and then they come out later and they say the water is safe to drink. Okay. I couldn't really find, so then the Ohio Department of Natural Resources then reports an initial fish kill within the township area and local water streams of 3,500 fish downstream dead. That number now has risen to close to 40,000.
Holy shit.
Fish that have died. Okay, so there are low levels of butyl acrylate and ethyl hexyl arylate in the soil. There is according to CNN yesterday, no vinyl chloride has shown up in any water samples.
I had read something up. They had an initial. They had detected something in they did a sample out of the Ohio River. And I thought they had like small traces, but then they checked again. They're like, yeah, no, there's nothing in the river.
Well, and that was,
and they kind of retracted their statement.
Right. And so what I read on that was,
and that's sketchy.
Well, and yeah, and they said that the Ohio River is I've only been over the Ohio River twice. And I've been right there where where Ohio and Mississippi come together there, outside of Paducah, Kentucky, and it is very wide there. It is super wide there where the rivers converge there. But from what I was reading, the EPA and the Corps of Engineers said, that the pool size is wide enough that it can dilute any pollutants in the water effectively. And to me, that when you think about that, now you're starting to get into the hundreds of thousands of people that would affect.
For sure.
I mean, going downstream. And so February 15th then. So February 15th, the governor of Ohio, I believe his name was DeWine, he meets, they meet in a high school gym in East Palestine. They meet with officials. They meet with Norfolk Southern, and in the beginning, and I want to get a little bit into the douchebaggery that is Norfolk Southern. Norfolk Southern initially offered the town $25,000. $25,000 initially. Now,
until those headlines started coming out.
Yeah, when those headlines. Now that was. So then they stepped it up a bit. So they did send $1,000 to each family in the community. Jeez. All right. So that was for deep, like your service master type people to come in, and that actually sounds about the ballpark figure of what, when you have service, like if you have flood in your basement or you have fire damage or anything like that, you call in these service master type people who come in and they'll do the deep clean and everything. And to me, that sounds, if I would have probably researched that closer, that would be good. So now, though, Norfolk Southern has set up a $1 million charitable fund for the community. Okay. Go ahead.
Can I throw something out real quick?
Go ahead.
I just did a quick Google search. The revenue, Norfolk Southern's revenue for 2022, $12.74 billion.
Yep.
And they offered the town initially $25,000 for what happened.
That is actually
something to consider here.
Yeah, and so out of that revenue, and I'm glad you mentioned that, but out of that revenue, they took in a $4.8 billion profit. So out of that 12 was a $4.8 billion profit.
But we're going to give $25,000.
Let's give $25,000 to. Here's a big FU to the community. We're going to give you $25,000. And Norfolk Southern. So we mentioned these guys do everything. And Travis, maybe you can go into this, how the Norfolk does a stock buyback program. Are you aware of what that's all about, or how that works?
Vaguely. It's, to my knowledge, I need Hank on here to explain this. Isn't it just like they sell and keep buying up their own stock to raise the price?
Yes.
To raise money.
Well, see, and Walmart does the same thing. Walmart,
and wasn't it? And I don't want to get too far off, but that was kind of the same concept of. Actually, no, I'm not even going to go there.
Okay.
But yeah,
these guys
to my knowledge, it's just buying their own stock to raise the price and then
to inflate. Revenue. Yeah, that's the way I understood it too.
Yeah.
To inflate the prices, the way I understood it too. The dividend checks that they cut their stockholders are amongst, I'm sure are amongst the top 20%. Norfolk Southern.
I'll go to check.
Norfolk Southern is notorious for layoffs. They have, within the last, these guys are about cutting corners. These guys are about where can I make the best buck at? So one of the areas, and I have listened, Travis has listened to a podcast. One of my favorite podcasters, and I watch a show on Apple Plus, is Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart had a reporter who was on the ground. He had a rights activist who was there, an environmental rights activist. They had they have one of the railway union, and you guys may have heard about this within this year. We were in the face of a nationwide rail strike at the last part of last year going into this year. And one of the things that they were pushing for was getting paid sick days. This is one of the areas that the rail industry has not, I don't know if they're not keeping up to par, but they're pushing, and they got 5 paid sick days a year, which that in and of itself is amazing. But these guys were, so Norfolk Southern, get back to what I was talking about. Norfolk Southern, one of the gentlemen who was on the podcast, and I've heard this from other sources too, one of the things that they're required to do, and this is true of any, I was talking to Travis about this, and Travis, we can kind of shoot off of this with your military experience too. What they're required to do is pre-layoffs. They would have Norfolk Southern, amongst a lot of these other railroads, they're required by the NTSB to do a walk around of each rail car. Now, your average train will carry anywhere from 125 to 200 rail cars. And they, when you have the checklist of things that you're supposed to look for, they said that it would take 3 to 5 minutes to go through this security checklist. So what are you doing? You're checking brake lines. You're checking wheel bearings. You're checking the actual, what goes on the rail, the wheel that goes on the rail. You're checking all of this stuff. and it would take 3 to 5 minutes for a team to go over a car. Norfolk Southern laid off a lot of these safety teams to where there was one guy. They went from a team to one guy, and the average time that this union member that I listened to said it went from 3 to 5 minutes down to 60 seconds to walk around.
Of course, it's one guy.
One guy. So when taking all of this into consideration, I look back at that stat: 1,705 train derailments average between 1990 and 2021. What's wrong with this picture, Travis?
There's a lot wrong with the picture. It's a company that's not enforcing its own standards, and workers are cutting corners and just doing the bare minimum. A lot of people are at fault here, and every industry is guilty of this. I mean, we all half-ass certain things in our job because we know everyone cuts corners in some way at their job. There's just something you do, I guarantee it. And you mentioned the military thing, doing inspections and stuff. I mean, I remember, so there's a whole process for like checking your Humvee. It's like QA/QC is what it's called. And so a lot of the times, guys would do what we call this a quick, or I'm not QA/QC, PMCS, a proper measure. I forget what it stands for. It's a damn military acronym. But anyway,
yeah,
a proper PMCS, you're going through the book. You're going check by check. You're looking at every detail. And I mean, it should take a couple hours. It really should, to do it proper. And some days, like, hey, we need this PMCS in 5 minutes. Like, just go through, check the basics, knock it out. And some guys, that's what they would do. They just knock a whole truck out in like 10 minutes, check a couple of the big things, and good enough. Check the box, send it in. And I can say from what I saw is when we had leadership that were lax and they didn't really enforce checking the vehicles properly, and we just did those little 5-minute checks on the trucks, most of our trucks were broken all the time. Mm-hmm. And I mean, military grade vehicles in general are just shit. And if you don't check them all the time, they're always broken down. And then when we had different leadership that came in and actually enforced, hey, like, no, we're going to spend all day, every Monday, going through this list. I want to see books out. I want to see guys getting under these trucks, checking them. I want them to be clean. When they started taking it serious, the amount of trucks that we had go down was way less. Mm-hmm. Way less. So I can, obviously, pretty common sense. I mean, if you do it the right way, you have less issues. And this is the case, I think, with the trains, because it's cutting costs and not enforcing the proper way of doing things.
At what cost, and I'm going to give a shout out to one of your classmates. Our bus mechanic that we have now, I believe he was in your class a year before, a year after you guys. Ryan Siebold is our bus mechanic down at Clopton. And he has done a knockdown job on our buses. And at the beginning and he was new this year. And one of the things that he stressed, here's the check sheet. I want this checked every morning. I want you guys to mark off that you checked and to do a walk around on the bus. Now, he's got those buses. I mean, he pulls every one of those buses. He'll do a heavy look over at least, I'd say every bus gets in there at least once every 2 weeks, and he's pouring over it and everything like that. But I mean, just to do, like you said, doing the basic walk around, and when I was trained,
it goes a long way.
It does go a long way because you're looking at, brake pads, you're looking at, and he's like, you let me know if you hear something, he said, even if it doesn't, you think, oh, let me know. And it makes me safe as a driver to know that I've got a mechanic who's like, dude, you got to check this. We need to know if you feel a funny vibration, if you feel anything, if something doesn't seem right, you talk about it, okay? But like you said, with this whole train thing, and you're seeing, to me, a bad wheel bearing. To me, obviously, it's not like, with a wheel bearing, it's not like you can't just easily, I'm going to lift the train car up. I mean, checking a wheel bearing you're going to have to hear it. I know, I mean, like when wheel bearing, and I know wheel bearing on a truck is a lot different than a wheel bearing on a train. But you see these warning signs and these waypoints. I'm really interested in seeing what the NTSB is going to pull out of this, because that video I showed, that waypoint was within that 20 miles of where the accident happened, and that waypoint shows the wheel bearing hitting 253 degrees.
Unfortunately, stuff like this shouldn't happen, but it's stuff like this that raises awareness and makes the changes necessary. Going back to the truck thing I was talking about, obviously much smaller scale, but like it took an incident where a high level leader needed a truck, a military vehicle to roll out. And they're like, yep, it's good to go, PMCS. And the thing broke down was like as soon as it left the parking lot. It took a situation like that for things to really change. Again, much smaller scale.
Right.
And then now this, like we were saying, these guys are doing 60-second checks. If they're even checking, I mean, it's a union job. I know how union jobs go. There's some lazy dudes.
Well, yeah.
But it takes, unfortunately, issues like this and to get change. And you lack on this, you slack on stuff like that. This is what you get: disasters.
And it's not for a lack of trying. Okay, you and I discussed this before the show tonight. So. There were
lack of what?
It's not for a lack of trying. Okay, so government had tried under the Obama administration. There was a push to change the braking systems on these trains. Okay, now for those of you who are not aware, I had heard this. I said I called BS initially. There's no way that this is true. This has got to be false. I heard on this other podcast. I was like, BS. I looked it up. I talked to my brother-in-law this evening, and he confirmed it. The braking system that is used on rail trains today was patented in the 1880s. Okay? In the
Innovation, baby.
Okay? That was George Westinghouse. George Westinghouse made many developments amongst the trains, two of which was the refrigerated train car, and the other one was pneumatic braking, air brakes. Okay, now, whereas before, if you ever watched, and I grew up with my grandfather watching the old Westerns, and you see the old steam locomotives, for lack of a better term, it was, taking the steam off, putting on the brake, and I mean, even today, a train to come to a full stop takes close to a mile. And we were discussing this earlier. When you consider the amount of weight that's on a train, and I'll just do a quick search for this while we're talking about this, but you think about the amount of weight that a train carries and how long it takes each one of those to stop. Okay, you're not just stopping one car. Like I said, this one that derailed in East Palestine was 150 cars. So you've got two to three engines at the front. You have 2 to 3 engines in the back, and just depending on which way the train's going, and you've got these locomotives that are stopping a train that's probably close to 3/4 of a mile long. I mean, it's going to take time for these to stop. And so your average weight of a train load, that's all.
That's got to be a lot.
Okay, so this is what Union. So this is from Union Pacific. This is one of Norfolk Southern's. Okay, most rail cars can have a gross weight, that's the total weight of the load, including the weight of the rail car itself, each one up to 286,000 pounds. Now, they have what's called heavy axle rail cars that can have a gross weight of up to 315,000 pounds. By comparison, federal gross weight vehicle limits for trucks traveling on the interstate is 80,000 pounds. So you're basically talking up to at least 3 semis per train car. Okay? And when when you're talking about this, trying to get that to stop, even after derailment, and you think about that. So one goes off the track. What's going to happen? You have a chain reaction. Boom, 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 boom. Cars just, and if you guys have seen the video, if you've seen the video of these derailments, I mean, it looks like a zigzag going up and down the track. Okay, and the it's not a good, it's not it's just not a good thing.
You know what blows my mind with this? I was just thinking about it. So I was at one point I was actually certified with the DOT and the DOD with hazardous material. I was hazmat certified at one point,
God
and
bless
so
you.
I learned the process of like it's a lot. Um, there's a lot that goes into packing like hazardous materials. I mean, they are strict. Like the 49 CFR is, oh my God, you got to have tabs on everything. Like there's a certain way to package every little chemical you could think of, and they're very specific, and the paperwork is very strict. Like it's a very strict and very tedious thing. So it blows my mind how like strict that they are of like packaging stuff, but yet there's no standards or lack of standards for the actual things that are carrying the goods. But
No,
how you pack it's important, but how you carry it,
how you carry it is not.
there's like it blows my mind how different it is because I mean there is so much that goes into just packaging this stuff.
When
It
you look
really is.
and when you look at when a train stops, and I did a couple of notes that I had about this. In an emergency, okay, you have to look at a number of different factors when you look at what takes a train to stop. Number one is the speed. Okay, so on an open rail, a train is, so when you say open rail, out on the, so out on where you're cleared of city limits or township limit, these trains can get up to 55 miles an hour. Okay, but so you have the speed of the train when the brakes are applied, the incline of the track, right? Uphill, downhill. Okay, the number of cars hooked behind the locomotives and the loading of those cars, like you said. And then the big thing, like we said, is brake delay. And I kind of got off topic with this. So this pneumatic brake system that is used on these trains is it's one continuous pneumatic flow. So we're talking air pressure. Okay, and if you've ever seen whenever these trains are coupled together, I mean, and it's the same thing like with a semi. It's basically, I would assume it's basically the same way that air brakes for a semi are hooked up too. Correct? I mean, is that it's like connected
I would assume it's similar.
yeah, and
I'm an
so
engineer.
but
Mechanic.
this is done so for a semi, boom, right there. Now for wrote it down. Okay, so for a standard, your regular car, so a regular car driving 55 miles an hour takes 200 feet to stop on, we're talking dry pavement, no ice, no snow, no rain, no anything, dry pavement, 200 feet to stop. For a train to so this was a 100, okay, so this is 120, so this is 120 cars. So for a 120 car train, can take anywhere from a mile to a mile and a half to stop. Okay. Throw in, so when you take all of those numbers and you put all that together, now you put a derailment in there. Okay. So now when you have one car that is derailed, it's off the track, you still got all of the weight of these other cars pushing it. Okay. So now you've lost connection. You've lost your pneumatic connection between the train cars. So now you have pretty much the engine and whatever cars in front of the derailment are braking and trying to stop this mess as it's pushing forward. And God knows how long this train, that's one thing I could not find was how long this train, after it was derailed, how long it took it to come to a stop. I mean, because when you look at some of I watched some drone videos, some amateur drone videos that were out on YouTube today, and I mean, you just see the swath. I mean, you could tell these train cars were pushed a ways because it's not just like, by my guesstimate, and this is, I would say 20 feet on each side of the rail, 20 to 40 feet. Looks like it just cleared out a path, just digging up for who knows
That's
how long.
crazy.
And so, but, there was a move back in 2000. So I said all this to say this. I keep on getting off track. In 2015, the NTSB under Barack Obama called for a rule to be applied to the railroad industry that would basically make electronically controlled pneumatic brakes for each individual car. Okay, so instead of what they call the brake delay, instead of waiting for the brake delay of all the pressure to go through the whole line from front to back of the 100, you could just do, I'm assuming, just like an electronic all stop, burn, okay, and you're going to have quicker brake time. All right. Now, of course, conveniently enough, to Norfolk Southern's response to these questions that have been asked, why hasn't the railway industry gone to this? And the railway industry says, well, they're shown to have these types of brakes are said to have significant failure rate. And I want to look back and I say, what about 1,705 derailments per year?
Right.
That's pretty significant. So,
well, and then again, there's
oh,
we
and
have all these
by the way,
innovations and things. Go ahead.
by the way, 2018, that rule was taken off the table. Just want to put that out there too.
Interesting. No, I was just gonna say regarding the brakes thing, it blows my mind how we have all these innovations in like cars. You look at like new electric cars and stuff like that, and yet there's like little to no innovation in braking systems of trains that carry large cargo and hazardous materials. Just
Yeah. Well, our buddy Murdoch chimed in and said, he was chiming in on what you said, Travis. He said PMCS is a must for all equipment. So
it is.
thank you,
It really
Murdoch.
is. I hated doing it.
Thank you, Murdoch. But yeah, and so I guess so let's go with this on our way out here. We got about 10 minutes left here.
Well, I was gonna ask you, do you want to cover you want to kind of go into like the fact stuff that you sent me? I feel like that's a whole episode in itself.
What's that?
And like talking about like the fact checking of like the federal government and all that stuff and what their role in it and like what the people are saying on the ground.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff we haven't got into. And I
Yes.
don't know if we're going to cover it.
Well, go ahead and
I don't want to brush over it
no,
either.
No. Go ahead. Cover some of these because I think I know what you're going to talk about. The thing that I posted. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, what are you thinking of? Because
some of the things. Okay. So again, some of the fact checks of what's being said versus what's on the ground.
Okay, there you go. I got you.
So what reporters are, for example, this is just one thing. One of the things that they said, reporters are being arrested left and right. Well, there was one report.
Yeah, okay. So there was that one reporter the night of, right?
Yes.
That I remember that was pretty. He got arrested, and what was the issue with that? Because I heard
he was asking some off the wall questions, and I'm trying to find it right now.
I heard he wasn't like cooperating with police or something.
Yes,
I think there's a video out there. I didn't really see it, but
yeah, one of the things, the one of the big ones that are out there right now. Okay. So, of course, the right is already criticizing Joe Biden because the day of the derailment was the day that he went to Kiev. How convenient. And he pledged more money to Kiev. At that same time, so people were saying, okay, you're pledging all this money to Ukraine, but yet FEMA's assistance has yet to be determined. Okay. And a lot of people are like, well, FEMA's not doing, So to quote our good friends over at the Jeannie Pereiro,
Yeah, I was
Judge
reading that.
God, they give all kinds of money for hurricanes and floods. Why isn't there federal money now for these people to move? Okay. Basically, what ends up happening is to get FEMA approval. Okay. FEMA is for, and they have different clarifications for like disasters, natural disasters. And I mean, they haven't, let's just say it this way, they have not ruled out, you know, they haven't ruled out FEMA aid yet.
Yeah, it seemed like for what I was reading, they're still trying to figure out
How to, yes.
what FEMA can technically cover under what it actually covers, like what its guidelines
So
are, and
to, yeah,
what falls under the
so to
guidelines.
quote a Ohio, instead of FEMA, this is Ohio OEMA if you want to. It says to ensure that East Palestine can receive assistance from FEMA, should this disaster qualify for FEMA aid in the future, Governor DeWine is preemptively filing a request with FEMA to preserve these rights. Okay, so it's getting, I mean, it's just getting, it's not like they've been rejected. Okay, and so and Biden's basically said, "But hey, whatever you guys need." Okay. The other thing, and I actually had this down on my notes too, the railway company, how much are they covering so far? Okay. Well, right now the NTSB and the EPA is putting it up on Norfolk Southern. Okay. So far, now this is in the 3 weeks since the wreck, since the derailment. Norfolk Southern has removed 4,588 cubic yards of soil. Okay, so if you think of a cubic yard, 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot. Okay, so they have taken out 4,588 cubic yards of soil, and they have pumped out and hauled off 1.1 million gallons of water. All right. So the deadline that basically the EPA and the NTSB is putting on them, if you guys don't, and they have to have a plan in place as to, okay, when do we plan on, when you have to have by, I think it was March, I don't know why the date March 15th is standing out to me, but I believe I read somewhere March 15th, they have to have a plan in place that says, okay, we're going to have this mess cleaned up by this date. Here's what we're going to do for every citizen. Here's how we're going to clean up. Here's the after effect. And they're going to do this. If they don't meet this deadline to clean it up and have it done effectively, they're going to be charged $70,000 a day. Now, again, as we said, to someone who had a profit of $4.8 billion last year, $70,000 is just like, oh, yeah.
I see that timeline getting pushed to the right, and they're just going to pay the money.
Right. Pay the money, take our time. All right. So,
So going back to the FEMA thing, and
yes.
this was what I was wondering when I was reading that article, saying that it was kind of discussing how the reason FEMA hasn't really been activated so much is because FEMA mainly covers property damages in regards to like floods or other natural disasters. Now we're talking property damage.
Go ahead.
So specifically talking about property damage. Now, here's my question, and I guess this is what they're determining. Say if my home got covered in a chemical residue, is that technically property damage? You could say, well, they're saying just clean your house off, but there's still questions around. Okay,
do I have to wear a hazmat suit when I do this? What's the deal?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there, and I would assume that's what they're trying to figure out. It's got to be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's my question. Is like, okay, what qualifies as property damage in this instance, or does it?
And that's one thing that I don't get either. I mean, when I was reading, it reminded me of, back before the EPA was really even a thing, and they, when you talk back in the early 1900s, when factories were just spewing out whatever crap into the air, and you just see, photos of timelines of buildings after they had been built to where, and you just see all the residue on these buildings from all the crap spewing out in the air. And you've seen the video. Just the flames of this thing shooting hundreds of feet up into the air and just billowing out. I mean, that stuff is not just going to go, oh, it's just going to float away up into the stratosphere, right? I mean, gravity, man. What goes up must come down.
Gravity ain't real, brother. You didn't know that?
Gravity ain't real. But
That's another episode we
yeah,
gotta do.
well, we need to have our flat earthers on for that too. But so at this town meeting, and I forgot to bring this up. So at this town meeting that happened on the 15th, one guy, so elderly gentleman, gets up and says, and this to me this sounds like a town of 4,800 people. This guy's like, "Look, I've got a garden in my backyard. Can I plant my tomatoes next summer? Can I?
It's a valid question. Yeah.
Can I harvest things out of my garden? You know, is it safe for one of the questions this, and I never even thought about, is it safe for me to mow the grass? Because when I mow the grass, you know, if you're like anywhere in Illinois after not having rain for a while, you're throwing dust up into the air, and we don't know how deep this stuff is going into the soil. I mean, we're seeing soil contamination.
You know, there's two scenarios here I can think of. Like, if we're thinking of, you know, this guy asking these questions, and then we were talking about it in our group chat, like the lack of news coverage that was initially on this train incident.
Yeah.
It's either they really don't know, they don't have the answers to a lot of stuff, and that's why there's a lot of lack of coverage, or they do know just how bad it is, and they're hiding it. And I could see both scenarios. Because, I mean, think about it. Something like this, and this even kind of relates to the whole Chinese spy balloon thing. I was being really vague about what we knew and what we saw, all that stuff. Do we really want people to know how bad it was? Or do we really want our adversaries to know just how much we knew about those balloons? It's a valid argument. I was listening to a podcast about that, and I don't want to go off on the spy balloon thing and get away from this, but I think there's a lot of hiding how bad it actually is. That's just my belief. I tend to believe that this situation is a lot worse than what they're letting on. And when that comes out, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the news is completely blown us out of proportion. I don't know.
What happens if you truly pull back the veil, though? What happens if you truly pull back the veil?
Well, that's the thing. Say if this is terrible, say the Ohio River is contaminated, say that this is actually spread way farther than we realize. We have another Chernobyl incident here in the U.S. If it was actually that bad and they unveiled the veil, do you think it would be peaceful?
No.
Do you think there would be order in that area?
No.
And that's unfortunate that maybe the truth is getting hidden because of that. But it's a likely scenario. It's not off the table that's what's actually possible.
You mentioned Chernobyl. So my brother, this has been probably 15 years ago. My brother, who's been on the podcast before, when he did a mission trip to Belarus, and he got to go in some of the Ukraine. He got to visit Chernobyl.
That's wild.
And this was
what did he say about it?
He said 15 years later, or this was 15 years ago. He said there's still nothing growing there. There's nothing. There's nothing. He said it's just like this, whatever you want to call it, 20 square mile area. Nothing, you know. And and this is my concern. So so when we pull back the veil, and I call it pulling back the veil, if we were to really see, because it's obvious that our governments are not, even the media, they're not, we don't have, I don't even want to say we have 50% transparency of what is really going on. You know, just like we don't know what's going on, like you said, the Chinese balloon thing. I'd say the war in Ukraine. You know,
that's why I'm saying, like, I think there's really two possible scenarios. It's either they know just how bad this is, or they don't know, and I think that's even scarier. Not knowing. I would rather know how bad it was than the government saying we have no idea how bad this is going to be or what the impacts are.
Right, and you think about the number of families that are impacted in the Ohio River Valley. Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, what's the long-term health effects of this for the people that's in that area? I mean,
you know, 40,000 fish. 40.
Yeah, right. I read articles, people's pets were dying and stuff.
Yes.
Like,
Well, so this, and that was the other thing I saw too, was this, the, there was a young beef cow on a farm, and this was some distance away, and this calf just up and suddenly died. And there again, you don't hear anything about, well, what caused this calf to die? What's causing these, what's causing these family pets to die? You know, somewhere someone's got to, and like you said, if they're to unveil and say, here's what's really going on, or if we're saying we don't know how polluted the Ohio River Valley is, like you said, is this going to create a mass hysteria? Is this going to create a mass panic? So to call this a train wreck is a little bit of yes. How ironic is the phrase train wreck in this situation? I don't want to think that this is one of the things that we promote on this on this show is not to promote mass hysteria, but also to have an open mind, to look critically at a situation and not just expect, here's the answer we're going to give you, be happy with it.
yeah, and
To me,
yeah, for sure.
and you know,
As much as it pisses me off, there has to be some level of,
well, that's
I hate using the word secrecy, but yeah, there has to
yeah.
be some level of secrecy with it from an order standpoint. I hate saying it because it frustrates me because I want to know the answers to everything. I want to know everything behind those spy balloons, the quote unquote UFOs. I want to know it all. But at the same time, I understand there's a reason we don't have all the
I still
answers.
want to know I still want to know who killed Kennedy, but I mean,
Oh, the FBI apparently, right? Isn't that what I
FBI,
read?
the FBI, the Cubans, the CIA, the communists,
Is that
Castro.
an episode we need to do? Do we need to do a
Oh my
JFK
gosh!
episode?
If we deep dive
Oh
on that,
my
if we
goodness.
deep dive on that, I can studying conspiracy theory and history is I that's one of my hobbies. Conspiracy theory. Look up the zero factor sometime. The zero factor on every president from 1820 to 1980 had a that was elected in a year that ended in zero. They either died they either died in office, assassination attempt, or they were assassinated. Always an
Jeez.
interesting thing. So, and then I could go on my whole thing, and Sean would probably be aroused by this about the whole thing about Eleanor Roosevelt being a lesbian, and just I mean, yeah,
That's the most American thing ever all day. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah, America, America. Anyway, we hope that you've enjoyed tonight's show. We threw a lot of information at you, and as always, thank you for those we didn't get around to the survey, but thank you for those who participated in the poll. It was about the train wreck and what you expected the government to do. But thank you for everybody who listens. I know that our live audience comes and goes, but we also have a ton of people. Thank you to the 9%. Yeah, Viva la Deutschland or whatever, you guys in Germany. Thanks a lot for listening. Please reach out to us sometime. We'd love to hear from you. I've yet to
Yeah, that
hear.
would be pretty cool. I don't speak German, but that would be
Yeah,
cool.
my German is, but to the 9%, 9% of our listeners that are in Germany, thank you. But anyway, thanks for joining us tonight. We hope to see you all next week, and we'll have our good buddy Sean back by that time, hopefully. And have a great week, and we'll see you next time.